Welcome to today's episode of our podcast, where we dive into one of the most thought-provoking books by Yuval Noah Harari, Nexus. Harari, a renowned historian and philosopher, is widely known for his works like Sapiens and Homo Deus, recognized for his deep exploration of humanity's past, present and future. In Nexus, he takes us on a journey through the transformative power of technology, the challenges of artificial intelligence, and the ethical dilemmas facing our interconnected world. Now, let's listen to the discussion about this fascinating book.
Welcome to your deep dive. You've sent over some fascinating excerpts from Yuval Noah Harari's Nexus, AI and the Evolution of Information. It's a big topic.
It really is. And a timely one. It seems like everyone's talking about AI these days.
Right. And you know what's interesting? The approach Harari takes to it. He doesn't just focus on the latest tech trends,
Yeah, he goes much deeper.
He takes us all the way back.
Way back. To the very roots of how humans share information.
We're talking like campfire stories, cave paintings.
Exactly. Harari's point is that stories, that's where it all began. They were the first information technology, really. Before writing, before the internet.
It's true, if you think about it. Passing down knowledge through generations, building a shared history, a culture.
Creating a sense of community.
He even uses examples like money, religions, even entire nations.
Powerful examples when you think about it.
These things, they only have power because we all agree they do, right? It's kind of mind-blowing. Stories actually shaping our reality.
And that's what's so crucial about understanding them. Because that power, it's not always a good thing.
Right, stories can be misleading.
Harari points out just how easily they can be twisted, sometimes intentionally, sometimes not.
And that can lead to
misunderstandings, conflict. He uses a really interesting example to illustrate this. Cher Ami, the World War I carrier pigeon.
Oh, right. I remember hearing about this. Didn't Cher Ami save like a whole battalion of soldiers?
That's the story, yes. The popular version, anyway. Supposedly, this pigeon flew through a hail of bullets, got injured even, but still managed to deliver a message with the location of some trapped American soldiers, saving hundreds of lives. Cher Ami became this hero, even received a medal for bravery, I believe.
Wow, a true feathered hero.
And the story, it had a big impact. Boosted support for the Army Pigeon Service. You could see how it resonated with people.
Heartwarming. Inspiring.
Except what?
Well, a historian, Frank Blazich, he did some digging. Went back through military records. And it turns out, while the story was inspired by a real event, it had definitely been, shall we say, embellished over time.
Embellished how?
For one thing, headquarters actually already knew where the lost battalion was before Cher Ami even took flight.
Oh, really?
And there's no actual proof that Cher Ami was even the pigeon carrying the message.
So the story took on a life of its own.
Exactly. It became, in a way, more powerful than the truth itself, even if the reality was more, let's say, nuanced. So it wasn't a lie, really. Just
more like a story that grew in the telling.
It's easy for things to get exaggerated over time, right?
Exactly.
And people want to believe in heroes, especially in wartime.
And that's what Harari argues. We're naturally drawn to stories that fit with what we already believe, our values, often without questioning whether they're completely accurate or not.
It makes you wonder what other stories we've accepted as fact without really thinking them through.
Right, and how much those narratives affect us, even today.
Exactly. So how about when humans transition from the spoken word to the written word?
A major turning point.
Harari says that's when we got bureaucracy.
And a whole new set of challenges around information.
Tell me more.
Writing, it allowed for these complex systems of record keeping, essential for large empires, institutions. Think about it.
Makes sense.
You can't run an empire based on word of mouth. Harari even links the invention of written documents to, wait for it, the very first tax collectors.
So bureaucracy is as old as taxes.
Seems so. And while bureaucracy can be incredibly efficient, Harari points out that it often ends up valuing order over accuracy.
Order over accuracy. What's an example of that?
Well, think about early attempts to classify life, biological classification systems.
Like the Linnaean system.
Exactly. Kingdoms like animals and plants and all those neat categories. It seemed like a good idea at the time.
It makes sense wanting to organize things.
Right. And that's what they did. But of course, as biologists learn more about evolution, well, it turns out life is a lot messier than those categories allow.
Because evolution is messy.
Exactly. Organisms change, they adapt, they interact in these complex ways. Trying to fit them into neat boxes, it just doesn't capture the reality.
It's an ongoing process. Things are always changing.
And bureaucracy, it's often playing catch-up.
Always a step behind.
Right. Then you have the invention of the printing press.
Which led to?
Well, on the one hand, it democratized access to information like never before. Books became more readily available, knowledge spread.
Sounds like a good thing.
It was. But here's the irony.
There's always irony.
Harari also links the printing press to the European witch hunts.
Wait, the witch hunts?
Yes. It's a stark example of how more information doesn't automatically lead to enlightenment, or less cruelty for that matter.
How so?
Well, printed books and pamphlets, they played a role in spreading the idea of this vast witch conspiracy.
Spreading fear and paranoia.
Fueling mass hysteria, leading to violence.
That's almost unfathomable now.
I know, right? But it was a different time.
A scary thought, though. More information doesn't necessarily lead to a better world.
It's a powerful reminder. Technology alone isn't enough. And it can be used for, well, less than noble purposes.
Absolutely. And speaking of which, Harari's analysis of totalitarian regimes and how they weaponize information, that's really unsettling.
Yes, especially the Soviet Union under Stalin. A chilling example of what happens when information control is taken to the extreme. Surveillance, censorship, propaganda, it was all part of the system.
Harari talks about these things they used Kartateki catalogs, internal passports. It sounds incredibly creepy.
It was a way of categorizing people based on how loyal they were perceived to be to the regime.
So your whole life could depend on how you were labeled in this system.
Essentially, yes. It determined everything. Jobs, housing.
That's scary.
Harari uses the example of kulaks. They were supposedly wealthy peasants targeted by the regime.
And if you got labeled that way,
the consequences could be extremely harsh.
It's chilling how easily information can be twisted into a tool for control, for oppression. And it makes you think about, the age we're living in now with AI.
Right, because Harari, he sees AI as different.
Totally different.
From any other information revolution.
And he should know.
It's not just that AI can process information so much faster than humans, though that's obviously a huge factor. It's that it can learn on its own and make decisions independently.
Without us.
Without us. And that has huge implications, right? For truth, for power.
Huge. Something that really worries me is this idea of algorithms, shaping what information we see without us even knowing it's happening.
It's that old saying, right? Whoever controls the information controls the world.
Exactly. And with AI, it's like, who's really in control?
Harari uses this example of Facebook.
Oh, right.
And how their algorithms, they ended up amplifying hate speech in Myanmar.
Oh, yeah, that was awful.
A really tragic situation. Because the algorithms, they weren't designed with ethical considerations in mind. They were designed to maximize engagement.
Keep people scrolling, keep them clicking.
Exactly. But in that context, it ended up having these horrific consequences, contributing to violence against a Rohingya Muslim minority.
Because the algorithm didn't understand the difference between harmless content and something that could incite violence.
And that's what's so worrying, because even the people who create these algorithms,
they don't always know what they're creating.
Exactly. It's what Harari calls the black box problem.
Black box.
You've got these systems more and more complex. And even their creators can struggle to understand, the decision-making processes happening inside.
So how do you control something you don't understand?
That's the billion-dollar question, right? It's why Harari keeps emphasizing the need for these strong self-correcting mechanisms, ways to monitor, to identify issues, to course-correct before it's too late.
It's like, how do you monitor something when you don't even know what to look for?
It's a huge challenge. And Harari, he acknowledges that. He stresses that we need new tools, new ways of thinking even, to understand AI, to regulate it, especially as it keeps evolving so quickly.
It's like trying to hit a moving target.
Constantly. But it's not impossible. One thing he really emphasizes is the role of ethics.
Ethics, okay.
Really thinking through the implications of what we're building every step of the way, from design to implementation to how it's used.
But ethics can be subjective, right? What I think is ethical might be different from what you think is ethical.
That's true.
So whose ethics are we talking about?
It's a valid point, but I think that's all the more reason to have those conversations, openly, honestly. Even if we don't always agree, we need to at least be talking about the values we want to see reflected in the technology we create.
That makes sense. But easier said than done, I imagine.
Definitely. And it becomes even more complicated when we factor in democracy.
Oh, right. Harari talks about that too.
It's a major theme in his work.
Right.
Because democracy, it relies on this idea of an informed public, right?
Able to make good decisions.
Exactly. But AI, it has the potential to really disrupt that.
Disrupt it how?
Think about it. We're already dealing with things like polarization, misinformation spreading online.
All the time.
It's like we're all in our own echo chambers, right?
Social media definitely doesn't help.
And AI could make all of that even worse. Like Harari talks about how algorithms can actually create those echo chambers, reinforcing our existing beliefs, even if they're not true, making it harder to engage with different perspectives.
Because the algorithm just keeps feeding you more of what it thinks you want to see.
Exactly. It's like a vicious cycle.
And then there's the whole issue of deepfakes.
Right.
Yeah.
That's where things get really crazy.
Because how can you tell what's real anymore?
Yeah.
When you can create these videos, these images that look so authentic, but they're totally fabricated.
It's like we're moving toward a world where truth itself becomes subjective.
Like my truth versus your truth.
Exactly. And then who decides? Who gets to be the arbiter of truth? It's something Harari warns against.
Is that what he means by the silicon curtain?
Exactly. He's worried that the world will split into these separate digital spheres.
Like the Iron Curtain, but with technology.
Exactly. Different countries, different regions, they might end up developing AI that reflects their own specific values, which could lead to this really fractured information landscape.
That's a scary thought. And then you have to wonder, who controls all of this? Because right now, it seems like it's mainly a few powerful tech companies.
Right, and that worries Harari too. He calls it a new kind of digital colonialism almost.
Digital colonialism.
Companies extracting data from users worldwide, gathering information, analyzing it, using it to, make profits, but not necessarily sharing that power.
Not sharing the wealth either.
And that creates this huge imbalance, right?
So it's not just a technological problem, it's a political problem, an economic problem.
Exactly. It's about who has power and how that power is used, and whether these companies, with their focus on profits, on market dominance.
Are they really looking out for humanity's best interests?
That's the question, isn't it? And it's why Harari argues it's so important to think about democratizing AI.
Democratizing AI. I like the sound of that. What would that look like?
Well, for one thing, making sure its benefits are available to everyone, not just a select few, and ensuring that its development, it aligns with democratic values. Things like transparency, accountability, citizen participation, those are all crucial.
So kind of like we need a global conversation about this.
Exactly. It can't just be left up to tech companies or even individual governments to figure out.
It's a global issue.
Exactly. It affects all of us.
So it sounds like Harari is saying that AI has the potential to be either incredibly beneficial or incredibly dangerous. It all depends on how we choose to use it.
Exactly. It's a powerful tool, but like any tool, it can be used for good or for ill.
And we're still in the very early stages of figuring all of this out.
We are, which is kind of exciting in a way, because it means we still have a chance to get it right.
To steer the ship in the right direction.
Exactly. To make sure that AI is a force for good in the world.
So with all these complexities and potential pitfalls, what does Harari suggest we do? What's the antidote to these challenges?
Well, he doesn't offer any easy answers, that's for sure. But he does offer a framework, a way of thinking about these challenges.
Okay, I'm listening.
He talks a lot about the importance of critical thinking, especially in this day and age with so much information flying around.
Being able to sort through it all, figure out what's reliable, what's not.
Exactly. And not just falling for, the most sensational headlines or letting algorithms dictate what we see and believe.
Easier said than done.
Oh, absolutely. But Harari, he stresses that we can't just be passive consumers of information anymore. We have to be active participants, engaged citizens.
It's about being aware.
Exactly. Aware of our own biases, for one thing.
Because we all have them, right?
We all do. And being aware of how those biases might influence how we interpret information, what we choose to believe.
And how about the ethics of all of this?
Huge. We have to be asking those tough questions.
Yeah.
About what values are embedded in the AI systems we're building.
Because those values, they're going to shape the future.
Absolutely. And that future, it's not predetermined. We still have a say in how this all unfolds.
We're not just along for the ride.
No way. We're the ones holding the map, right? We just have to choose which direction we want to go.
That's both empowering and terrifying.
It is. But that's the thing about living in interesting times, right?
There's never a dull moment. Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive. Our listener has a lot to think about. But before we go,
final question.
Always my favorite part. So if AI could write its own mythology,
okay, I like this one already.
what would it look like? Would we even recognize it as such?
Wow, that's a good one, because it makes you think, right? Like, what if it's already happening? What if we're already living in an AI-generated narrative and we don't even know it?
Mind officially blown.
Mine too. And on that note,
until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and as always, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
And that's a wrap on today's discussion of Nexus by Yuval Noah Harari. We hope you found the insights on technology and its impact on our future engaging. What's your take on Harari's vision of the future? Exciting or worrying? Thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe and share. Stay tuned for more thought-provoking episodes, and we'll catch you next time.